Anne and Jenny Cleland run Pukerau Native Nursery in Southland. 35 years ago, they began their business growing exotic plants for shelter on farms. But their focus is now on riparian revegetation and restoration of rare and local cold-hardy plants into the Otago and Southland landscapes. They've been working closely with local Pukerau School and the Department of Conservation, restoring a red tussock reserve.
The market's predominantly farming. Revegetation work and so on has become more with stock. It might be with subdivisions up around the Queenstown area, where people have to plant revegetate areas as part of their resource consent.
Okay guys, grab a bag and move on.
Today we've got the local primary school from Pukerau come down here to the Red Tussock Reserve. It's one of the last remaining red tussock lands in the Gore Ecological District, and it's adjacent to State Highway 1. They're in year 4 of a planting project to rehabilitate this 1 hectare grass area, and they've been growing the tussocks from seed themselves at Pukerau Nursery, and then they weed them, and then they come down here and they plant them, and they get to see the full cycle. Rightio. Now most of you have been out here before, but some of you haven't. When we're planting these tussocks, there's no excuse for a poorly dug hole today. It's pretty easy digging. Pukerau School's one of the Enviro School program that the Regional Council runs. So there's quite a few schools in local Southland that are into environmental projects. Pukerau School are close to this scientific reserve and have picked this as their community-based project. It's a great way of engaging the community and getting people aware of these wetland fragments and what a role they play. It is the largest remaining red tussock land in the Gore Ecological District. If you look around, you can see what's happened to the rest. It's all farmed and whatever. So this is pretty significant. Arne at Pukerau Nursery, he's invaluable. He's amazing. You know, he spends time with the kids coming down here to collect the seed. He makes his nursery facilities available for them to actually grow the seed and weed the seed. He's providing that out of his own business time, and then he comes down here and spends some time with us helping to plant them and interacting with the kids. He's just a wealth of knowledge. We couldn't do without him, really. The other special plant that Arne's been growing for us are some of these. It's a pygmy pine, and this is a pretty special pine. It's only found in New Zealand. Doesn't look much like a pine tree. It's got little pine cones on it though. It's the smallest conifer in the world.
This is pygmy pine. It's growing down in the Red Tussock Reserve nearby. We found one plant there. We wasn't too sure what it was, and it was identified by Brian Rance, I think, from Doc, botanist. He knew it was there. So we have taken cutting material from it. There was no seed or anything like there, but so they wanted us to grow some of that. And these plants here are a result of that, and they are now being planted as part of the school project back into the Red Tussock Reserve. These are 2 Alaria species, or tree daisies, and they're on the threatened plant list. This one here is Alaria hectori, and it grows on the riparian areas. It's growing locally around the Hokanuis. They're really tough plants, and so we try to encourage people to use them within the new riparian planting where it's appropriate. The reason they're threatened, or classed as threatened, is because their habitat is in agricultural sort of sites where the plants have just disappeared with agriculture. These guys require the seed to land on bare soil to germinate, and so if that's no bare soil, they're not going to germinate, and so with all that rank perennial grass and so on, ryegrass and so on, it just doesn't work. Here is the South Island kowhai, and it's quite common. There's a major project that DOC have been encouraging in Central Otago called Project Gold, and really trying to get a lot more of them planted around. So they've collected seed from different areas around and sent it down to us, and we've been growing it for them. We're finding farmers that they are more and more keen on having diversity in their planting, and they like the story behind the plants too. So when they find out that a plant is something that used to be in their area, they really latch onto that. They really quite like the idea of adding those sort of things back into the planting. So this planting here is pretty typical of riparian planting, or what you can do. I mean, this is in the garden, but it's typical of that sort of thing. Primarily we're trying to shade the water, plant on the north side, and also trap nutrient runoff from the paddocks, preventing it from getting into the stream. If people think there's going to be flood problems, we plant the lower folding plants, the carex sectors, and toi and that type of thing will fold with the water. Plant that down within the high flow zone and keep the shrubby plants above that high flow zone. Things have changed quite markedly in the last 3 decades. We've sort of started off predominantly just exotic plants. Planting natives was a little bit of an oddity 35 years ago, but it gradually increased the use of natives, particularly for low shelter, where people don't want anything that's too big. I think all farming really need to be looking at the riparian planting, so protecting waterways and so on, but it's got a long way to go with that, and I think that's, there's a good future with that. Plus there's still a lot of land out there with no shelter on, so yeah, and shade too for animals.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.